Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So in this one, we're going over the new card releasing today, Snowguard, whether it's worth your tokens, and then a few different brew ideas if you happen to purchase or open this new card. So what does Snowguard do? Snowguard is a 1-cost, 2-power that reads, while in your hand, this transforms each turn into a hawk or a bear. So how this works is when you draw Snowguard, it will immediately transform. First it transforms into a hawk, then every turn it will swap, so next turn it'll go bear, then back to hawk. You get the idea. What do the hawk and the bear do? The hawk is they're both 1-cost, 2-power, so they keep the stats, but the hawk is on reveal, ignore all location abilities next turn. And then the bear is on reveal, trigger the effect of this location. Now overall, I really like the design of this card. I think it's really fun that we have more interesting ways to interact with locations. That being said, I don't think we are currently at a point in the game where these effects are really going to shine yet, for a few different reasons. We have gotten a bunch of different clarification on how some of these effects work, but I think one of the biggest things here is the fact that the denying locations for the next turn, that applies to both you and your opponent. If this was a one-sided effect, I think this card would actually have a lot of potential, but the fact that you are essentially often removing the negative effect of a location, not only for you, but for your opponent, is kind of a downside, which means you aren't likely to be able to utilize that effect to the best of your ability. Another fringe interaction here is this will not persist at the end of the game. So if you think you're trying to do something cute, like turn off a bad location for your Cerebro 2 deck, that doesn't actually work, as the locations will become active as you're going into the end of the game, even if you do this going into the final turn. The bear, I think, is the more interesting half of this card. For that reason, trigger the effect of the current location. However, this also has some stipulations that make it, I think, less than desirable. Mainly the fact that this will not trigger locations that are based on a condition that's involving a specific turn. So, no re-triggering Asgard or Dream Dimension. And when we look at the list of locations, there are about 124, 125 locations in the game right now. And out of all those locations, it's only, in the 20s range, I believe, that can be re-triggered by this card. Now, I'm sure sometimes that'll be decent, but the fact that it's only going to come up, 1 out of 5 times for every available location, it just seems like it is too fringe right now, and the downside of just having a 1-2 in your deck for all the times that you don't actually get locations that you can re-trigger, or maybe you get ones you can re-trigger but you don't want to re-trigger. I think it's a cool effect, but currently I think we need more locations that give you a benefit for re-triggering it before this ends up being a more appealing card to play. So is this a card you should be spending your collector's tokens on? This gets a hard pass from me. I usually like getting most of the new cards, and I thought initially this one would be great because I really enjoy playing zoo decks, and though it's not the worst in zoo decks, and we're going to see some lists with it here in a minute, I just don't think this is anywhere near worth 6,000 collector's tokens. I don't even think it's worth 3 in the current form. I think this is a card that will eventually probably be pretty good, but I think it's going to be a long time before it actually realizes that potential. We are going to need a lot more locations to make this card more relevant, and as we're seeing them actually start to release fewer locations a month currently, feels like it's going to be quite some time before the card actually can shine, and by that point, it might already be downgraded to Pool 3, so you don't actually have to pay any tokens to acquire it. Okay, so all that being said, we are going to take a look at some decks here now for Snowguard. Most of these are going to be zoo-focused decks, as that is the real shell I felt like she actually might have a little bit of impact in. Maybe allow you to play into some locations that zoo otherwise gets locked out of. Could make sense. So the first one here, pretty basic zoo deck. We just have a lot of good cheap 1-drops, like the Hood, Ant-Man, Bast is an all-star, Iceman and Korg for some interaction. Angela to get kind of pumped up by us spamming our cheap stuff. Hitmonkey, which is really good if we're going to throw a lot of 1-drops down on the final turn. Bishop, also good with that as well. Shang-Chi gives us a bit of flexibility in dealing with a large threat. And then Khazar and Blue Marvel to buff up our going wide boards. So she's probably okay here. To be honest, I think Kitty Pryde is probably an infinitely better card for this type of list. So when Kitty gets re-enabled, you probably would just run that in the Snowguard spot. But hey, if you have Snowguard, this is definitely a decent one you could try her out in. The next deck we have here is pretty much the almost exact same list. The main difference here is we're putting Thanos in. I've liked Thanos Zoo for a long time. The stones are really powerful cards, and they're just really good 1-drops in general. So we take that same kind of Zoo shell, but we put Thanos in, mainly for the stones. Sometimes we play Thanos for a 6/10, but most of the time we're not doing that. However, if we play all the stones and Thanos is big, or if we just don't have a very impactful play with our hand or due to locations, sometimes Thanos can be relevant. But yeah, Thanos Zoo, pretty good deck. Obviously, you're never too happy about Killmonger, but it's pretty reasonable against a lot of the non-Killmonger stuff going around. Then we have a Doom Wave shell. This is kind of just a good cards deck, in my opinion. It's really, we're just trying to put a good amount of quality, powerful cards into one deck. So we have a lot of the better 1-drops in Sunspot and Iceman, using Snowguard in that actual 2-drop spot. I feel like, most of these lists used to run Scorpion, but Scorpion doesn't feel quite as impactful as it used to be. So maybe some location manipulation can be good for a deck like this. Then we have Lizard, who's obviously good with our Storm for getting that closed down early with a lot of power. Mr. Fantastic, also good for holding priority and going into the Storm lane. Wave, so this is kind of a Doom Wave shell. So what we're trying to do is on turn 5, we're going to play Wave, and that way we can float mana, which will let us play She-Hulk and one big threat on the final turn. Most of the time, that will end up being our Doom or our Arrow. Arrow, still really good when you can only limit your opponent to playing one card during their final turn, turns out. Shang-Chi, just for some good interaction. White Queen, as she's a good tempo play and just gives us some more information, and sometimes gives us a big threat to cheat out with Wave. And then our last deck here is a bit of a different take on the Dracula Zoo deck. So you may have seen this a while ago. We used to be seeing Red Skull run in the Destroyer slot here. Now that Red Skull has been lowered in power a few times, I think Destroyer is just a kind of better pick for another big thing to discard with Dracula. The idea with this deck is we're just trying to play out all the cards in our hand that we can. Then we're going into our final turn trying to get Dracula guaranteed to discard our Destroyer or our Infinite. We also have ways of playing these cards if we want, but that's usually not the main goal. Turn 5, we can go Dracula into 0, so we could play the Destroyer and then maybe discard our Infinite if we have both in hand, or just play out the Infinite if we have our armor in play. Also have the flexibility of floating with Sunspot into playing the Infinite, but most of the time we're just trying to flood the board and then get a really valued Dracula discard to help close out the game. So those are all the decks we have here for the new card Snowguard. Again, probably would not advise spending your tokens on this, especially with other cool cards like Jeff around the corner. But if you really, really like it, those are some ideas you can use if you do end up buying it or if you just happen to open the card. But that is going to wrap it up for this video. Let me know what you think about Snowguard in the comments below. And if you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.